I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called me up, President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88, and in New York I pay $1,300, and it's the same box, made in the same plant, by the same company. It's the identical pill that I buy in New York. And here I'm paying $88 in London. In New York, I'm paying $1,300.
Trump just dropped what might be the biggest bombshell of his presidency. And it's got pharmaceutical executives losing their minds, while certain members of Congress are scrambling like they just lost their retirement funds. And honestly, maybe they just have. Because with one signature, Trump just launched a nuclear strike against Big Pharma that could slash drug prices by up to 80%. Yes, 80%. And exposed exactly which politicians have been in the industry's pocket this whole entire time.
Mr. Secretary, Trump says some prices will come down almost immediately. What is the timetable for these price cuts?
Well, there's a series of escalating steps. Right now, America provides 75% of the pharmaceutical revenues in the world, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population. We're paying, in our country, the list price for Ozempic is $1,300 per dose. In London, it's $88. Democratic and Republican politicians have been talking about for years, we got to end these discrepancies. Nobody has had the courage to do it because of the power of the pharmaceutical lobby on Capitol Hill. In answer to your question, how soon will this happen? It depends on how enthusiastically the drug companies cooperate. There are a series of escalating steps if they don't cooperate. We've been meeting with the pharmaceutical companies. They admit this should have ended a long time ago, and I think they're ready to figure out a way to get there. They have advantages in this executive order because we got rid of the PBMs, we got rid of the middlemen, and that's something that they've wanted themselves.
So what exactly happened here? President Trump signed an executive order implementing what's called a most favored nation policy on drug pricing. Sounds boring, right? Well, it's anything but. This is essentially Trump telling Big Pharma the party is over. For decades, Americans have been paying 4 to 10 times more for the exact same medications that people in other countries pay pennies for. The same factories, the same ingredients, the same pills. Just a wildly different price tag. And why? Because Big Pharma could get away with it. Let's break down what this executive order actually does. First, it forces pharmaceutical companies to sell drugs to Americans at the same price they charge in other developed nations. That means if a medication costs $10 in Europe, they can't charge Americans $100 for the exact same pill. As Trump put it in his announcement, the United States will pay the lowest price available in economically comparable countries for prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals. This could reduce prices by 30 to 80%. We're talking about potentially cutting the cost of life-saving medications by up to 80%. Medications that people literally need just to stay alive. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and why certain members of Congress are probably having emergency meetings with their pharmaceutical donors right now.
This is an extraordinary day. This is an issue that, I grew up in the Democratic Party, and every major Democratic leader for 20 years has been making this promise to the American people. This was the fulcrum of Bernie Sanders' runs for presidency, that he was going to eliminate this discrepancy between Europe and the United States. But as it turns out, none of them were doing it. It's one of these promises that politicians make to their constituents, knowing that they'll never have to do it. And the reason they'll never have to do it is because they know that Congress is controlled in so many ways by the pharmaceutical industry. There's at least one pharmaceutical lobbyist for every congressman, every senator in Capitol Hill, and every member of the Supreme Court. By some estimates, 3. Pharmaceutical companies, the industry itself, spends 3 times what the next largest lobbyist spends on lobbying. So this was an issue that people talked about, but nobody wanted to do anything. because it was radioactive. They knew you couldn't get it by Congress. We now have a president who is a man of his word, who has the courage. President Trump was taking money from the pharmaceutical industry, too. I think they gave you $100 million. But he can't be bought, unlike most of the politicians in this country.
All of Congress is influenced by Big Pharma. That's not my claim. That's coming straight out of the administration. And the numbers back this up. Did you know that the pharmaceutical industry spent $377 million on lobbying in 2022 alone? That's more than 3 times what the next largest lobbying group spent. According to Carolyn Levitt, while the United States has less than 5% of the total world population, we account for 57% of Big Pharma's total profits. Let that sink in for a second.
First of all, it cannot be overstated how big of a deal this executive order that President Trump will be signing in a couple of hours is for American families, and especially our seniors who have been ripped off by very large and rich pharmaceutical companies. The United States of America is less than 5% of the world's population, yet we purchase 75% of Big Pharma's profits. We pay an astronomical amount in comparison to other countries around the world. So the president is signing an executive order today that is going to implement most favored nations drug pricing and is going to reduce the cost of drugs in this country by more than half at least. America is going to pay a better rate and a fairer rate to the rest of the world. That's what the American people deserve. This is huge news. And also, I will add, we know that healthcare costs and drug prices were the #1 driver of Biden inflation. So not only are we bringing those down, but we are ending Biden inflation once and for all.
Dr. Oz, another member of Trump's health team, called this the most significant executive order in American history concerning drug pricing. He explained how Americans have been subsidizing lower drug prices for the rest of the world, and this order aims to end that practice.
Well, the president wants equalization. That's the word he used. And it's mostly about fairness. Over the next 30 days, we're approaching all the major pharmaceutical companies and saying, this is what your drugs cost in other countries similar to ours. We want most favored nation status, which means if you're willing to sell President Trump's anecdote about a portly friend of his who was getting a GLP drug in London said, I can get it for $88 here. I've got to pay $1,000 in America. That doesn't seem fair. And so most pharmaceutical companies, I believe, and they're going to hear from us over the next few weeks, understand that this is not really right for America to generate 70% of their profits, and we're only 4% of the world population. So we believe there's going to be a desire to come to an understanding, and you see from the stock prices on pharmaceutical companies that others may think this is also okay. My belief is that if we can't get this to the right place in 30 days, there are tactics we can use. They exist already within government. The president has some opportunities. Congress has options. But the best case scenario would be we all get along and say this is something that you as an American probably don't think is right either. How do we get Europe to pay a little more so America can pay a little less? And that is exactly what I think the pharmaceutical shareholders will be okay with, because they're going to make the same amount of money, just not all of it from the U.S.
Now, I want to point out something that doesn't get enough attention. There's a darker side to the whole pharmaceutical industry that goes beyond just overcharging for medications. Did you know that in 2015, a pharmaceutical company had developed a cure for hepatitis C? That's great news, right? Well, their stock dropped by 70% because they actually cured people. Goldman Sachs even released a report questioning whether curing patients was a sustainable business model. I'm not making this up, y'all. Gilead Sciences saw their sales drop from $12.5 billion to less than $4 billion after their hepatitis C cure reduced the number of treatable patients. The system is literally designed to keep people sick and dependent on medication, not to cure them. This is an industry that has its hooks in our elected officials, an industry that makes more money from treating symptoms than curing diseases. So, what happens next? Well, this executive order is going to force members of Congress to show their true colors.
While Americans pay outrageously high prices for prescription drugs, the pharmaceutical industry and the PBMs make enormous profits every year. In 2021, 10 major pharmaceutical companies in America made over $100 billion in profits, and their CEOs get very high compensation packages. Last year, the 3 major PBMs in America made over $27 billion in profits. In other words, people in this country get sick, they can't afford the medicine, and yet the drug companies, the PBMs, make huge profits.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, no.
And what about Elizabeth Warren? There are claims circulating that she received over $10 million from pharmaceutical companies. If true, how will she respond to this executive order that threatens her donors' profits? The reality is, this executive order is going to reveal which members of Congress are truly working for the American people and which ones are working for their donors. Because they'll either have to support this move to lower drug prices or oppose it and explain to their constituents why they think Americans should keep paying 10 times more than the rest of the world. And of course, the mainstream media isn't exactly highlighting the story. Instead, they're focusing on, well, anything else.
President, what do you say to people who view that luxury jet as a personal gift to you? Why not leave it behind?
You're ABC fake news, right?
Why not?
Only ABC, well, a few of you would. Let me tell you, you should be embarrassed asking that question. They're giving us a free jet. I could say, no, don't give us, I want to pay you $1 billion or 400 million or whatever it is. Or I could say, thank you very much. There was an old golfer named Sam Snead. Did you ever hear of him? He won 82 tournaments. He was a great golfer. And he had a motto, when they give you a putt, you say, thank you very much. You pick up your ball and you walk to the next hole. A lot of people are stupid. They say, no, I insist on putting it. And then they putt it and they miss it. And their partner gets angry at them. You know what? Remember that, Sam Snead. When they give you a putt, you pick it up and you walk to the next hole and you say, thank you very much.
So here's the bottom line. With one signature, Trump just launched what could be the biggest attack on pharmaceutical price gouging in American history. And in doing so, he's forcing every member of Congress to choose between their donors or their constituents. And as NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya put it, this measure is historic and overdue, addressing the unfair system that has forced Americans to subsidize global research and development through higher drug prices. Whether you love Trump or hate him, this is an action that could genuinely help millions of Americans who are struggling to afford their medication. And it exposes a corrupt system that has allowed pharmaceutical companies to price gouge Americans for decades, while buying up all the influence in Washington. The question now is, which members of Congress will stand with the American people and which will stand with their donors? I guess we're about to find out. Thanks for tuning in to the 9/10 podcast, where possession is 9/10 of the law. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Peace.